Episode 45, America's First Serial Killers. Hey y'all, I'm Heather and this is Poison Appalachia, the dark side of Appalachia. As always, thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed last week's episode on Haunted Mississippi. I think I'll work my way up the map. Next month I'll do Haunted Alabama. But that'll just have to wait for next month. Today we're going to talk about our nation's first serial killers, Joshua and William Harpe. According to Wikipedia, a serial killer, also known as a serial murderer, is a person who murders 3 or more people with the killings taking place over a significant period of time in separate events. Their psychological gratification is the motivation for the killings, and many serial killers involve sexual contact with the victims at different points during the murder process. The United States FBI states that the motives of serial killers can include anger, thrill-seeking, attention-seeking, and financial gain, and killings may be executed as such. The victims tend to have things in common, such as demographic profile, appearance, gender, or race. As a group, serial killers suffer from a wide variety of personality disorders. Most are often not adjudicated as insane under the law, although a serial killer is a distinct classification that differs from that of a mass murderer, spree killer, or contact killer. There are overlaps between them. Historical criminologists suggest that there have been serial killers throughout history. Some sources suggest that legends such as werewolves or vampires were inspired by medieval serial killers. In Africa, there have been periodic outbreaks of murder by leopard men, and Liu Pingli of China, nephew of the Han Emperor Jing, was made a prince of Zhejiang in the 6th year of the middle period of Jing's reign. 144 BC is when that was. According to the Chinese historian Sima Qian, he would go out on marauding expeditions with 20 or 30 slaves, or with young men who were in hiding from the law, murdering people and seizing their belongings for sheer sport. Although many of his subjects knew about these murders, it was not until the 29th year of his reign that the son of one of his victims finally sent a report to the emperor. Eventually it was discovered that he had murdered at least 100 people. The officials of the court requested that Liu Pingli be executed. However, the emperor could not bear to have his own nephew killed, so Liu Pingli was made a commoner and banished. In the 9th century, year 257 of the Islamic calendar, a strangler from Baghdad was apprehended. He had murdered a number of women and buried them in the house he was living in. So there have always been serial killers, they just weren't labeled as such until around the 21st century. But the first serial killers in the United States were the Harpe brothers. Micajah Big Harpe, born Joshua Harper before 1768, and Wiley Little Harpe, born William Harper before 1770, were American murderers, highwaymen, and river pirates who operated in Tennessee, Kentucky, Illinois, and Mississippi in the late 18th century. They're often considered the earliest documented serial killers in the United States history. Some say the Harpes were brothers, others claim they were just cousins. The Harpe brothers, Micajah and Wiley, emerged from a background rooted in Scottish heritage, although historical records about their early life remain ambiguous. Thought by some to be first cousins named Joshua and William, their familial connections linked to Scottish immigrant ancestors who settled in North Carolina. Often in the turbulence of the American Revolution, the Harpes initially sided with the Tory loyalists, their loyalty extending toward the British cause. They immigrated from Scotland in 1759 or 1760. According to the theory that they were cousins, their fathers were brothers John and William Harper, who settled in Orange County, North Carolina between 1761 and 1763. Like many Scottish settlers of the American colonies, the Harpers were Calvinists and avowed Tories loyal to the king. Prior to the American Revolution, their father may also have served in Tory militias in the War of Regulation, or Regulator War, 1765 to 1771, during which colonialists in the Carolinas took up arms against the continuing royal government's interference by British colonial officials. This made the locals not liking their family at all. When the Revolutionary War began, the Harpes' fathers tried to join the Patriot American forces, but were denied due to earlier associations with the British loyalists. The negative treatment of the Harpes family by hostile Patriot neighbors may have contributed to the Big and Little Harpes' feelings of persecution as children and their desire for revenge against people they considered rebellious traitors. Reportedly, after some time, political tensions between the Harpe family and local patriots had escalated drastically, culminating in an attack on the family by local revolutionaries, in which the boys witnessed the lynching of their parents. Upon seeing this, the Harpe boys are said to have fled into the forest and hidden for a while before they were found and rescued by members of the renegade band of Chickamauga Cherokee. After being brought into the tribe, the boys realized that they had similar beliefs as the new native caretakers, from whom they learned how to properly hunt, trap, and dress wild game, and forage on native plants, as well as how to steal livestock, raid properties, and various methods to best torture and kill enemies. Little is known of the Harp's precise whereabouts at the outbreak of the American Revolution. According to Captain James Wood of the Continental Army, they joined a Tory rape gang in North Carolina. These predatory, violent loyalist criminals took advantage of the general wartime lawlessness by beating, raping, stealing from, torturing, and murdering all those who did not take kindly to, as well as burning or destroying property, especially the farms of patriot colonists. During these early years, accounts of the Harpe brothers' exact whereabouts and activities remain murky. The Harpes also served as military associators, though they were not provided soldier uniforms, weapons, or pay by the British government. Like many other loyalist volunteers, they served via hunting, foraging, robbery, and through looting of corpses on battlefields. Following the decisive British defeat by Patriot and French forces at Yorktown, 1781, the Harpes left North Carolina, dispersing with their Native American allies, the renegade Chickamauga Cherokee, to Tennessee villages west of the Appalachian Mountains. On April 2nd, 1781, they joined the war party of 400 Chickamauga and attacked the Patriot frontier settlement of Bluff Station at Fort Nashboro, present-day Nashville, Tennessee, repeating the assault several months later on either July 20th, 1788 or April 9th, 1793. On August 9th, 1782, the Harpes accompanied a British-backed Chickamauga Cherokee war party to Kentucky at the Battle of Blue Licks, where they helped to defeat an army of patriot frontiersmen led by Daniel Boone. During the American Revolution, Captain James Wood provided an eyewitness account that stated the Harpe brothers had joined a loyalist gang who took advantage of wartime lawlessness. The gang would steal, destroy property, rape, and murder. They kidnapped 2 girls, Susanna Wood, Captain James Wood's daughter, and Maria Davidson, a minister's daughter, and whisked them away to Cherokee Chickamauga town of Nickajack. There, they resided anywhere from 2 to 13 years. Right before the American Army crushed Nickajack and its inhabitants, the Harpe gang headed to East Tennessee. Along the way, the Harpe brothers killed their partner, Moses Doss, because he paid too much attention to their women. The whereabouts of the Harpes are unknown after the summer of 1795. By the spring of 1797, they were apparently dwelling in a cabin on Beaver's Creek near Knoxville. Both boys were married and slaughtered hogs to make a living. History says the 2 boys' violent ways followed them to Knox County. The town's livestock frequently went missing, and barns were mysteriously burned. A posse was formed after a man named Edward Teal's horses were stolen from the stable. Both Harpes were captured, and they managed to escape while the posse tried to take them to the jail in Knoxville. The Harpes' homicidal rampage began in early 1798. The Harpe women said it was the turning point in which the men declared war on all mankind. After their escape, the Harpes hunted for whoever divulged their whereabouts to the posse. They saw a man named Johnson and a rowdy groggery just outside Knoxville, dragged him out of his establishment and killed him. They disemboweled him and filled up the opening with rocks so the corpse would sink into the Holston River's bottom. It was discovered days later, drifting along the river. This weighing down became a signature corpse disposal method seen in the Harpe serial killings. In 1798, the Harpes' killing spree began and will be remembered as one of the most violent in the history of the U.S. After being kicked out of Knoxville, the Harpes fled north into Kentucky. They entered the state on the Wilderness Road near the Cumberland Gap. They are believed to have murdered a peddler named Peyton, taking his horse and some of his goods. In December, they murdered 2 travelers from Maryland. Big Harpe used his tomahawk to split open the head of one of the men. Next, a man named John Langford, who was traveling from Virginia to Kentucky, turned up dead, and a local innkeeper pointed authorities towards the Harpes. The criminal pair was pursued, captured, and jailed in the state prison at Danville, Kentucky, from which they managed to escape. When a posse was sent after them, the young son of a man who assisted the authorities was found dead and mutilated by the Harpes as an act of retaliation. On Christmas Day, they were captured near the Crab Orchard and taken to Stanford Jail in Lincoln County. The brothers and their pregnant wives were then transported to Danville Jail in January 1799, where they were expected to stand trial. The brothers escaped on March 16th and left their pregnant wives behind to stand trial. Both women were acquitted of their charges and gave birth in jail. By all accounts, the women were treated very well. The community rallied around them, gave them money, interns, and an old filly to get to Knoxville, clear of the Harpes. After about 30 miles, the women changed direction from Knoxville to the Green River. They traded the mare for a canoe and started down the river to meet the Harpe brothers at a prearranged meeting place. The year 1799 was the Harpes' most unrestrained and bloodthirsty. On April 22nd, 1799, Kentucky Governor James Girard placed a $300 reward, which is like $5,000 in 2024, on each of the Harpes' heads. By mid-May, the pair had killed a man named Dooley in Metcalfe County, Kentucky. While fleeing northward, the Harpes killed two men named Edmonton and Stump. They camped out on the Barren River across from Frederick Stump, who welcomely rowed across their boat with a fiddle and a whole mess of fish. The Harpes stabbed him, disemboweled him, stuffed his body with rocks, and dumped him in the river. When they were near the mouth of the Saline River in southern Illinois, they came upon three men encamped there and killed them. The pair then made their way to Cave in Rock, a natural cave on the bluffs above the Illinois bank of the Ohio River, and a stronghold of the river pirate and criminal gang leader Samuel Mason. A posse had been aggressively pursuing them, but stopped just short of the cave on the opposite shore in Kentucky. With their wives and three children in tow, the Harpes found refuge with Samuel Mason, who preyed on slow-moving flatboats making their way along the Ohio River. While the Mason gang could be ruthless, even they were reportedly appalled at the actions of the Harpes. After the murderous pair were found to have a habit of taking travelers to the top of the bluff, stripping them naked and pushing them off, Samuel Mason forced the Harpe brothers to leave. The criminals gained horror at the sadism driven by psychopathic lack of empathy for other human beings. The Harpes ventured through Kentucky back to Knoxville, Tennessee. Meanwhile, the Harpe brothers continued to kill and spent the summer doing so, leaving a trail of dismembered bodies from Kentucky back to Knoxville. The brothers were indiscriminate when it came to their victims. They murdered men, women, and children. They killed a girl before they could cut her body into 1-inch strips. They slaughtered a family and the family's slaves, a massacre that took 8 lives. In the month of July 1799, the brothers killed a farmer named Bradbury and another man named Hardin near Knoxville. They murdered a young coffee boy for his rifle on Black Oak Ridge. A few days after this, they murdered William Ballard, disemboweled him, and weighted his body down with stones. On July 29th, the Harpes were in what is now Morgan County, Tennessee. They came upon two brothers, James and Robert Brazel. The Harpes used a tactic well known to them. They asked the Brazel brothers to join the hunt for the evil Harpes. The Brazels agreed. Well into the woods, the Harpes accused the Brazel brothers of being the Harpes and ordered one or both of them to dismount and turn over their weapons. One of the Harpes tied James Brazel's hands while Robert Brazel jumped off his horse and tried to get James' gun. Robert made his escape, outrunning Little Harpe, who chased and shot at him. After 10 miles, Robert met Mr. Dale and the group of 4 travelers and pleaded for their help. They returned to the spot where the incident occurred, now known as Brazel's Knob, and were horrified to find that James was not only dead, but that his body had been much beaten and his throat cut. Near the Tennessee-Kentucky border, the Harpes murdered John Tolley, then came across and murdered John Graves and his son. Around Clay Lick Woods, near today's Adairville, Kentucky, the brothers slaughtered the Trisword family. At least 10 men, women, and children were murdered, their bodies stripped, mangled, and hopelessly disfigured. Sometime around August 1799, the Harpes bashed a young black boy's head against a tree, but took none of the dead boy's belongings. They murdered a young girl who, according to the early 1800s letter by Sarah McClendon in Henderson County, Kentucky, was picking wild berries and wandered further from home when she met the Harpes. The brothers decapitated her, cut off one leg to her body and all the toes on her foot. Near the end of that summer in 1799, while in Kentucky, Big Harpe's daughter would not stop crying. Out of reflex, he smashed the child's head against a tree or wall, killing her instantly. It was the only one of his murders that he expressed remorse over. But she wasn't the only child of theirs they killed. Sources say that the Harpes killed several of their own children. At least 3 children are said to have survived their fathers, but the majority of their offspring seem to have been slaughtered for expedience. The Harpes traveled through Kentucky disguised as Methodist preachers. They came upon the cabin of Moses Stegall, who wasn't home. Some sources say the Stegalls and Harpes had met before. As was custom back then, his wife Mary Stegall invited the brothers to the hospitable dinner and provided a place to sleep. Fellow traveler Major William Love was already there. The Stegalls had a 4-month-old baby named James. Big Harpe slept in the room with Love, but Major Love's snoring kept him awake, so he kindly smashed a tomahawk through his skull to silence him. The next morning, the infant Stegall started crying. Big Harpe slit the baby's throat, and when Miss Stegall screamed, she was also murdered. The brothers then burned down the family's cabin. They left the Stegall area and noticed the evening campsite of 2 men, Hudson and Gilmore. The next morning, Big and Little Harpe apprehended the two men and accused them of the Stiegel murder, robbery, and arson. They shot Gilmore, who died at the scene. Hutchins broke free, but the Harpes caught him and killed him. When Moses Stiegel returned home and found the carnage, he immediately formed a posse. At this time, the population was sparse, with miles between, and law enforcement was either non-existent or too long coming. These murders were the last straw for the region, and the vigilante justice took hold. The posse called for the Harpes to surrender. They attempted to flee. Micaiah Harpe was shot in the leg and back by Leiper, who soon caught up with him and pulled him from his horse, subduing the outlaw with a tomahawk in the scuffle. As he lay dying, Micaiah Harpe confessed to 20 murders. While Harpe was still conscious, Moses Stiegel slowly cut off the outlaw's head. Later, the head was spiked on a pole, some accounts claim a tree, and at a crossroads near the Moses Stiegel cabin that is still known as Harpe's Head, or Harpe's Head Road, along a modern-day highway in Webster County, Kentucky. Wiley Harpe successfully escaped the confrontation and rejoined the Mason gang pirates at Cave and Rock. 4 years later, Wiley Harpe might have been captured along with the rest of the gang, but went unrecognized because he was using the alias of John Sutton, or John Sutton. Both Harpe and Samuel Mason, the gang leader, escaped, but Mason was shot. Afterwards, Little Harpe and another gang member, Peter Alston, who went by the names James May, he was the son of counterfeiter Philip Alston, they tried to claim the bounty on Samuel Mason, although it's unclear whether Mason died from the wounds sustained during the escape or whether Harpe killed him. Regardless, as they presented Mason's head, a Kentuckian recognized Harpe and Alston as outlaws themselves, and the two men were arrested. The two soon escaped, but were quickly recaptured, tried, and sentenced to be hanged. In January 1804, Wiley Harpe and Peter Alston were executed by hanging. Their heads were cut off and placed high on stakes along the Natchez Trace as a warning to other outlaws. At the end of their bloodthirsty crime spree, the Harpes were believed to have killed more than 40 men, women, and children, although some experts said it was likely 50 or more. The Harpe women, after being freed from cohabitation with the brothers, led relatively respectable and normal lives. Upon the death of Micaiah Big Harpe in Kentucky, the women were apprehended and taken to Russellville, Kentucky State Courthouse, but later released. Sally Rice Harpe went back to Knoxville, Tennessee, to live in her father's house. For a time, Susan Wood and Maria Davidson, a.k.a. Betsy Roberts, lived in Russellville. Susan Wood remarried later and died in Tennessee. Her daughter went to Texas. On September 27, 1803, Betsy Roberts married John Huffsutler, and the couple lived as tenants on the Colonel Butler's plantation. They moved to Hamilton County, Illinois in 1828 and had many children. The couple eventually died in the 1860s. In 1820, Sally Rice, who had remarried and traveled with her husband and father to their new home in Illinois via the Cave and Rock Ferry. As the brothers expanded their reign of terror, they targeted travelers and settlers along the Tennessee and Kentucky border. Their ruthless approach to crime drew the attention of the authorities and communities alike. The residents lived in constant fear of the Harpes' next murderous act, and their gruesome reputation spread far and wide. What set the Harpes brothers apart from other outlaws at the time was their method of disposing of their victims. Their trademark mutilation of corpses, such as slitting throats, filled the local populace with dread and disgust. Their violent and sadistic behavior was not limited to their victims, but also extended to the women who had been coerced into joining the criminal enterprise, subjected to rape, abuse, and even infanticide. The reign of terror would not last forever, but its impact on the communities they terrorized would be felt for generations to come. The Harpe brothers' brutal and inhumane methods of violence left an undeniable mark on the history of the American frontier, ensuring their names would forever be associated with some of the most notorious and shocking crimes in the region's history. I'd never heard of the Harpe brothers until I started researching it, but according to Wikipedia, there are a lot of mentions of them in popular culture. I guess I just never heard of it. William Faulkner, in his novel Requiem for a Nun, described the Paleolithic evolution of the area served by the Natchez Trace, prominently mentions exploits of the Harpes and Masons, highlighting the butchery and savagery of the early history of Yoknapatawpha County. I apologize if that's wrong. In the 1941 film The Devil and Daniel Webster, or All That Money Can Buy, Big and Little Harpe are part of the jury of the damned that Daniel Webster must convince in order to free an innocent Jabez Stone. In 1956, Walt Disney's production of film Davy Crockett and the River Pirates, the Harpe brothers are portrayed by American actors Paul Newland as Big Harpe and Frank Richards as Little Harpe. The 1975 Broadway musical The Robber Bridegroom featured two characters, Big Harpe and Little Harpe, based on the Harpes. Big Harpe is presented as a cut-off head. Sorry, I read this, but I forgot what it said before. Big Harpe is presented as a cut-off head in a trunk rescued by his brother when he was put to death for thieving. He's also the smarter of the two brothers. The Harpe brothers were the inspiration for Big and Little Drum and Lois McMaster Bujold's 2008 classic novel Passage. Part of the Sharing Knife series, Wiley Harpe is also the subject of a song on Bob Frank and John Murray's 2006 album World Without End. In 2015, the Investigation Discovery television channel series Evil Ken aired an episode about the Harpe brothers called Something Wicked in the Woods. A short narrative of the Harpe brothers' lives appears in Silas Saterstorm's 2015 novel Slab. Tiger, the novel's main character, grows up with her family near the Mississippi River on the land of Wiley Harpe's estate off the Natchez Trace, where Wiley Harpe would dismember the corpses and make arrangement from the parts ornamenting the land around his humble plantation. Tiger's grandfather installs a tire swing on a tree, to which he also affixes a historical plaque, Little Harpe hanged here. The book The Blue Cloak by Shannon McNear was released in 2020, telling the story of the Harpes with a focus on Sally. Two novels by author N.G. Neville, Betsy Roberts, and Cut On and Be Damned cover the Harpe story extensively. The first explores it from Betsy Roberts' viewpoint of how she survived being kidnapped, and the second focusing on the Harpes themselves. The same author also published a book of short stories about the many characters involved with the Harpes brothers' death and salvation. Have you heard of the Harpes brothers before this? They definitely sound like some bad dudes. Today's episode's a little shorter than some, but I hope you enjoyed it. I think my next couple episodes are going to be longer, so maybe it'll even out. So that's about it for today's episode. As always, thank you for listening. You can follow me on social media under Poison Appalachia. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Threads, Lemonade, TikTok, Blue Sky, and YouTube. If you could, on the podcast platform you listen to, could you please like and rate me and share me, please? Let everyone know about my podcast. Thanks, and have a great week.